spirit of reconciliation, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. I pay my respect to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island peoples today. Welcome to Totally Lit, the podcast celebrating reading, writing and creating literature. I'm your host, Ky Garvey. Thank you for listening. Hi listeners, I'm pleased to bring you my chat with Sarah Surgey, my international guest. Sarah is a children's author based in the UK but published worldwide. Sarah has worked with some amazing children's publishers in the UK and also writes in-house for publishers in France and Belgium. On top of this, her books have been acquired into 16 different languages and used in collaboration with NGOs such as UNICEF and Voices of Children, Ukraine. Sarah has a degree in a BA Honours in English Language and Literature. You will mostly find her under her 4 cats, picking off fur from her clothes as she writes down all of the children's stories filling her head. You may also find her occasionally coming out of the hazy shadows and plunging herself knee-deep into the social media frenzy of Instagram. Sarah's 4 daughters keep her in check to make sure that she doesn't embarrass her family too much, especially since she has learned how to make a reel. Sarah's book, The Heavy Bag, is a children's book that looks at the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, sadness and acceptance. Children can experience grief for a loved one, a pet, or even moving on from a school or area. When all of the emotions build up inside a child's mind, they can feel like they are carrying around a huge weight with them. Check out The Heavy Bag. It's just been released in Australia through Daisy Lane Publishing. I hope you enjoy our chat. Sarah Surgey, welcome to Totally Lit. I'm very excited to have you joining me today. You're my second international guest, so welcome.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you.
Can you tell me about your latest release, The Heavy Bag?
Yes. So The Heavy Bag is a children's book which explores the feelings of grief. And probably a few of your listeners would have heard of it over the last couple of years because I've been talking about it, which feels like forever. But very excitingly, it's launching in Australia, which I have waited for such a long time. So yeah, The Heavy Bag is coming to Australia through Daisy Lane Publishing, and it's still the same story, but it's had some new illustrations from the same illustrator, and it's basically been reformatted for the Australian market. So I'm really excited for this children's grief book to come to the Australian market.
Very exciting. And it explores a pretty heavy subject, The Heavy Bag. Would you like to explain a little bit about the storyline?
Yeah, sure. So it's The Heavy Bag. I mean, it's the title says exactly what it is, really. It's about this heavy bag of emotions, which a little girl named Enid is carrying. And the bag has felt very heavy since her granddad died. And as I said, this book's been out for a few years now, actually since the pandemic. And that was obviously a time where children were really experiencing grief like they had never before, or it was the first time, or they're at least hearing about it on the news because, this was this worldwide pandemic, and suddenly, it was everywhere about numbers of people dying, and we all knew somebody who at least had COVID or was ill from it. So it was really kind of thrust upon children in a way that hadn't happened before. And it happened at the same time that children were suddenly locked down and in their houses and away from schools or places where they could really kind of offload about how they were feeling collectively. So everyone was isolated. And I have been a writer for quite a long time, but I always used to write for magazines, and I've written an adult crime fiction book before, and so I'd kind of dabbled, but I was a teacher and I was also volunteering for children and families mental health charity, and then obviously the pandemic hit and everything stopped and everything closed, and I had these ideas of children's books, and I just had this idea of this little girl walking through this kind of vast nature carrying a really, really heavy bag, and I just kept seeing it in my mind's eye. And then I think because of the context that we were in of what was happening with grief and the pandemic, it just kind of all came together. And I remembered back to myself as a child losing my granddad, and it was a huge event in my life that I really struggled to talk about how I felt. I didn't understand my feelings. So it all kind of came together when one day somebody said to me, a friend of mine, about the pandemic, they said, it just all feels so heavy.
Mm.
And I thought, yes, yes, it does. And it just kind of came together then. And that's where the heavy bag came from.
In Australia, we have been a little bit protected from the impact of the pandemic, although it certainly was a terrible time for us here as well. But we probably didn't have as many deaths and as much loss in terms of us catching COVID. How has the reception been in the UK to your book, where the impact was much heavier?
So I've been very lucky because the book was published. I published the original UK edition. It was very kind of ad hoc. We were in this pandemic and there was a printers up the road and they were still open. If you went with your mask, and they put a box outside and you put your order in, and it was all done like that. And I think I really actually didn't know what my intention with the book was, first of all. None of us knew how long it was going to go on for. I think we still were in this kind of bubble that it was just going to be a couple of weeks and then maybe we'd be out of it. Of course, it wasn't. So I had this book and I just printed it. I printed it, and it was picked up by ELSAs, which we have here in the UK. I don't know if you have them in schools in Australia, but they're emotional literacy support assistants.
Right.
And they're in schools and they use books with children
Mm.
to talk about emotions. It was picked up by an ELSA. We have ELSA support here, and it was taken virtually to their conference because they were still on lockdown. So actually, it was the thread of schools that really picked up the book in the UK, and it was primary schools that were buying the book in and then using it within the lockdown remotely and virtually with children. So I think that was a very big avenue for me with the book that I didn't realise, and that was the UK. And then, yeah, it just kind of snowballed from there.
Amazing. And how did you connect with Daisy Lane Publishing to come to Australia?
So I've been doing various podcasts over the years, all about kidlit chat, children's literature. And I was lucky enough to be invited to host with some amazing Australian authors for Daisy Lane Publishing's Kidlit Chat. So I was on there, and I hadn't, we hadn't broached the subject really, but we'd done quite a few series, and we were always talking about different books, and I was always talking about the heavy bag, obviously. And yeah, Jen, who's the editor and founder, just said, we really need to bring this to Australia. Why isn't it in Australia? Do this. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. It's something that I've wanted to do for such a long time, because it's gone to so many other different countries, and I really wanted it to come to Australia. But as an outsider looking into Australia, the Australian book market feels quite close to us, because it's very, the publishers really want to encourage Australian writers, quite rightly so. I absolutely get that, and I do support that. It just means that as writers outside of Australia, it's very hard to get into the market. So it was something that I'd kind of put on the back burner. I wasn't sure if it would ever happen until, yeah, Jen approached me and said, let's get this out over here.
Amazing. Jen is a lovely lady. I've met her a few times.
Very much
Yeah,
so,
she's a
yes.
wonderful publisher here in Australia.
Yes.
In terms of publishing, so you've self-published the book yourself, is that correct? Or is it now?
Yeah, just in the UK, the original UK edition was self-published by myself, but it's been picked up by traditional publishing houses all around the world. So I've got
Amazing.
lots and lots of languages, lots of different dialects. So it's in the US, it's in India, it's in Denmark, Sweden, Germany, France, all over. So yeah, so it started off of a self-publishing journey, and then I kind of got thrown into this different journey where I was the writer here, and then I was suddenly the publisher, and then I was selling it on as foreign rights to publishers around the world. I think, again, it was definitely that whole context, time situation, because everything was still on lockdown. So a lot of deals were being done virtually, and it was just, yeah, it just happened, and it snowballed. And obviously the more traditional publishers that come on board with different languages, other publishers say, well, hang on, we want it in our language as well. So I think so far translation wise, so that means not every single one's been published, but translation wise, I've got about 16 languages.
Amazing.
And that's just because some of the languages are used by UNICEF, so
Hmm.
they haven't been published into a physical book, but they have been translated for them to do workshops. So
Fantastic. And that initial change from being self-published to then handing it to other publishers, how did that feel? Did you feel well, I can imagine you would be happy for traditional publishers to take it on board, but did you feel like you were losing a little bit of control?
yeah, I would say honestly, it's been a journey of two halves
Hmm.
because, yes, of course, any writer can tell you this. As soon as you have a traditional publisher who say, we will take your book, we will do everything, we will sort it, it is amazing. There's absolutely no getting around that. It wasn't the fact actually that I felt like I was losing control, because to be fair, the book has the story has stayed the
Hmm.
same. There's obviously been different visuals for different cultures. Some of obviously when the translations have happened, there's been different kind of areas in the story that have had to change for cultural reasons.
Yep.
That's always been presented. I've always been very, very aware of it. So I haven't felt actually like I've lost control. What I have struggled with probably more is that anyone who self-publishes a book will know we work 1,000 hours a day. We
Hmm.
work at 1,000 miles an hour. We live and breathe these books, and obviously publishing houses don't work as fast as us because they have lots of different departments, lots of different people, they have lots of different timelines, they have lots of different books. So I think possibly sometimes I felt frustrated, but actually that was a really good insight for me into how the publishing world works, specifically for children's books. I have learned a lot, and I think that was the one thing that I really stopped myself and said, just take notes, just learn how this works. And I think that's been a really positive experience. But yeah, so I don't feel like I've lost control on any of the editions that I've done. It's just been probably slower in some cases, or maybe missed opportunities. I'm very used to, as a self-publisher, to just emailing people and saying, can I show you this book? Can I?
Yeah.
But they don't work like that at publishing houses.
Mm.
There is this kind of real staggered stage of, etiquette,
Yes.
which I think self-published people, bless us, we would just go to anybody and say, look at this book, whether they reply or not, we just do it. But of course that doesn't happen. So I think probably there's been a few little frustrations, but
Mm.
the good has definitely outweighed the bad.
Amazing. And will you be coming to Australia to visit if the book is here?
I really want to. I really want to. I do have family in Australia who I'm very, very close to, just outside of Sydney, and we have been talking for a long time about me coming out to them. So I think the more momentum this book is getting, I mean, I've already done an amazing school visit virtually through Books in Homes
Oh, I'm a Books
for
and
him.
Homes author as well. There we go.
Are you?
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing? I got
Mm.
up I think last week, the week before, 4 o'clock in the UK. I was online by 4:45 in the morning, and those children were in my mind for, days later. They were amazing. It was very emotional. It was very amazing. We had a lot of laughs. It was a real cultural exchange as well, which we kind of thought it would be. It kind of went beyond the book. They really wanted to know about England.
Hmm.
And so I really loved that. And I know that I had a really positive response to that. So I think I'm going to do a few more of those. And any virtual author visits for schools. So I just think, yeah, if the heavy bag can pick up a bit of momentum in Australia, then it would definitely be on the cards. Yeah.
We could lure you over for a visit.
Yes. Yeah.
So really, though, that opportunity you had where your book was picked up in schools really
Yeah.
helped it take off.
Definitely. I mean, I can't say enough how schools and libraries are where our books need to be,
Mm.
because the way I look at it is, I mean, I do a lot of bookstore events as well, where people come in, children come in with their families, and they listen to the story and they chat with me and they tell me what they've been writing and what they've been reading, and then the book's bought, and it is an amazing experience. It's so lovely to chat with the children. But there's a lot of children that don't go to
Yeah.
bookstores, and a lot of children whose family situation doesn't allow for that. They don't have books at home. They don't have the money for books. So I really try and get myself into schools
Yep.
and into libraries for free events to talk to all children, because I just think we can't have that divide with books. There's enough divides in the world for children growing up. It cannot be books as well, because every child deserves to have a book, to be read to be listened to, and more importantly, to have these events. I was chatting with books in homes for children, and it's about the event. All children should have an author visit and have the chance to ask questions and to think, that could be me. All children do. So I just think schools and libraries, where they're free places for children and there is access there, that's where the books really should be going. If you buy a children's book, buy two and donate one to a school. It's let's fill up their libraries as well for children. So yeah, schools and libraries are where it's at, I think.
I'm part of a great program called Author Pen Pals, where we
Okay.
get connected to a school each year and we write to the students.
Okay.
And I
Oh,
believe
wow.
it originated in the UK, actually. So
Okay.
you should check
Okay.
out that
I
if you're
will. Yeah.
committed to writing a few letters to a
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's lots of fun.
Yeah.
And the books and homes. I've only done one event for them so far, just because I work during the day as well. So
Yeah. Yeah.
scheduling can be a bit
Yeah.
challenging, but it was such a lovely event though. And the kids were thrilled. Like
Yes.
it made the day special that an author came
Yeah.
to their
Yeah.
school. And because I have a little bit of imposter syndrome, one of the students came up and was like, I know who you are. I'm so excited. I'm like, oh, do
Oh.
you think I'm somebody else?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, she'd read my
Yeah.
book and knew who
Yeah.
I was, so
Yeah.
that was very cute.
Yeah.
So
That's
those
amazing.
experiences are just
Yes.
so invaluable. And I recall when I was in primary school, authors would come to visit us at school, and that just
Yes.
sparks your imagination
Yeah.
and that, oh, it's a reality. You can do
Yeah.
these. I think it's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
important for us to be going and visiting the schools and
Yeah.
engaging with the kids and just planting that seed of possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, I grew up in, kind of inner city London, and I don't ever remember anyone coming in and saying, you can be an author, you can be
Mm,
a writer. And I feel like, I'm 44 now, almost 45, and I just feel, my career started when I hit 40, really,
mm,
for children's books. I was obviously writing before, but children's books, 40. How sooner would I have started it if I'd been inspired at school as a child, of some, if authors had come in and said, this is what you can do. This is
yeah.
a
Mm.
worthwhile career. This is something that you absolutely can go into, and is very respectful, and is an amazing thing. So I just think, if we can catch children at that young age and say to them, you've got stories in your head, you've got an imagination, amazing.
Mm,
Let's,
mm.
let's see where that goes. So I think that's really important.
And it's so lovely, like the letters and the photos. Recently, a friend sent me a little drawing that her niece had done because she loves my book and her character, the character in it is her favorite character, and just knowing that you have made that connection with one little
Yeah.
reader, it's
Yes.
amazing. So it's definitely worth writing the book if you've got something in your head that you want to
Yeah.
share with the world, do it.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and there are so many different pathways to publishing as well. You can
Yes.
self-publish or you can
Yeah.
go through traditional publishing. And sometimes, if you're lucky, they meld together like yours has. So did you have a specific incident that inspired you to sit down and write that, or was it just the COVID environment that we were in that
Yeah.
prompted you to write?
I feel like it was everything
Mm,
and nothing in particular. It was just kind of, I feel like You know, as writers anyway, we've always got stories in our head, and I think the heavy bag was probably always there. I could always see this little girl with very dark hair and this bright yellow backpack. Yeah, I mean, I could just
Mm,
see her, and it was like a different way that I was visualizing it. So I think she was always there, but I think we just have to be open to the signs. So when, you know, we have to listen to other people and read the signs around us, and I think that's when our stories kind of come together. And it's been really interesting to watch it evolve and change and, you know, go into these different cultures, let alone languages. I think
mm,
that's been interesting. So yeah, I would say just if, you know, if your stories are there in your mind, you know, they may come that year, they may come 10 years later, but I think right place, right time definitely helps.
mm. And how have you found the marketing side? Was that something that you needed to sort of do a crash course in to connect with your
Yeah, I
self-published book with the market?
I learned as I went along. I mean, I've literally hit the ground running. So it's November 2020, I first released it. So we're coming up to 4 years. And I have, oh my gosh, learned so much about social media and marketing and putting yourself out there. It's been huge. And I think it's the hardest part of being an author.
Mm,
But it's the one where you see the most results and you get the most connections. So it's really important not just to sell your book, but as being an author, because you really do need connections and support from other authors,
mm,
especially children's authors, because we're kind of on a very different journey. It's really hard to explain to people how hard we work, and how much we have to push ourselves. It's not just about
mm,
writing the book at all. I mean, that's probably a tiny part. You know, now I write a book, and that will take up, you know, that tiny part of my life, and then it's you've got to be out there and you've got to be on there. And obviously, because of the pandemic, everything, you know, everything went virtual and everything went online, and
mm,
it's kind of, it's now expected, it is expected from you when you go with publishers. Doesn't matter if they are traditional publishers and they've got everything set in place and they've got a marketing department, you are expected to really be present. So yeah, I didn't take any courses. I just hit the ground running. I probably made a load of mistakes. I still do, but yeah, we're all out there, and I think we're all out there doing it, and we're all very honest
mm.
with how hard it is to suddenly put yourself out there on social media. You are putting yourself out there for criticism, and but I kind of, whether it's because I'd hit 40, I was just like, I don't care. You know, I'm just going to go for it. This is it now. So yeah, and actually, the more you can do it, the easier it does get.
Mm.
It really does. But I'm always on Instagram, and I'm always, you know, putting out little tips for other people, other writers, and different advice and things that have helped me. So, and I think that's a really good part of the Kidlit community.
Yeah, definitely sharing information and ideas and supporting others when their books are coming out and then having other authors reciprocate is
Yeah.
really a helpful way to move forward.
Yes.
Um, it does sometimes feel like things are a little bit futile, like you try something, it doesn't work,
Yes.
and you just have to dust yourself off and go, okay,
Yeah.
let's try a different direction.
Yeah.
And I
Completely.
think that resilience is really
Yeah.
important, that you
Yeah.
just have to put it down to, okay, that didn't work. Let's get up and
Yeah.
try again.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because yeah, some things,
Yeah.
yeah, you're trying to sell your book and you're thinking, oh, is everybody sick of hearing about this book now?
Well,
And yeah, extending the life from just that 3 month period of sales
yes,
after release to four
yes,
years is quite an
yeah,
accomplishment.
yeah. And I think we as authors actually have the luxury of doing that. You know, you can imagine you're in a office job, 9 to 5, and you know, you're making mistakes publicly. At some point, you're going to be pulled into an office, and you know, is this job actually really for you?
Mm,
That's not the case for us. You know, we're out there, and if we do stumble a little bit, it's okay. Make a bit of mistake, it's okay, because we're all trying and we're all very open and honest. And you know, you can just go back on the next day and, you know, reframe it or do something different and try something else, and it doesn't have any knock-on effect
Mm.
on your books or you as an author. It really doesn't just sit there. It kind of everything moves on so quickly. So I think it's okay if you put something out there and it's just not getting the results that you want. That's okay. It's still out there and you just never know who's going to see it. And
Mm.
I think that, yeah, that's definitely a thing. No one's going to see you until you're out there. And I think we really have in our heads this whole thing of, oh, we just can't keep plugging our book. People are going to get fed up at some point. But every time I do talk about my book, I get a new order from another school.
Mm.
And and I think, well, I needed to do that post. It may have probably annoyed a few people that were, oh, not that book again. But actually, another school saw it and they
Mm.
ordered it, and the
Yeah.
child who needed it had it. So,
Mm.
yeah, I think we actually have to, without apologizing, keep putting ourselves out there because, we don't earn a lot of money. We do a lot of things for
The harsh
free. A lot
reality.
of things for free. So I think that's kind of we're okay. It's like that's
Mm.
kind of the payoff, I'm doing this for next to nothing. So yeah, I'm going to talk about my book, and if I get one sale from it, or if I get one connection from it, or
Mm.
something, then that's great. If not, it just keeps reminding me what I've done.
Mm. Mm. And I think the beauty of children's books is that every year a new set of children are growing up and moving into school and learning to read. So you can touch a whole new generation every year
Yeah, yeah.
so that your book is fresh to them, even though the year ones or I'm not sure what to is it just grade one in
Yeah,
the
so we
UK?
have we ours are divided by key stage. So we have in primary school we have key stage 1, key stage 2.
Mm.
So key stage 1 is when they start in reception at 4. And then they go through, and then halfway through the primary school year, they go up to Key Stage 2. That's from
Mm-hmm.
year 3 up until year 6. So the heavy bag is used in Key Stage 1,
Mm-hmm.
but that's most definitely not who it's just bought for. I mean,
Yeah.
it is,
Mm.
when people buy it, I get messages all the time of giving it to their talk with their teenage child. For them as an adult who's lost something, it's definitely not in a certain key stage for people,
Yeah.
but just for
Mm.
schools, yeah, I reckon
Mm.
key stage 1.
But every year there's a new cohort coming in,
Yeah,
which is great
yeah,
for if you've got a picture book because there's new readers to read it. And I think the sad thing though is that everyone has loss. So it's always a topic that needs a book. So if
yeah,
you're helping people with their grief and their loss and just
yeah,
understanding the process, that's
yeah,
fantastic. So I've got a few questions that I ask all my guests just
yeah,
to get to know you as a
yeah.
person. So what was your favorite book growing up, Sarah?
So I was very much, born in 1980. So here in the 80s, it was very much in the UK, Enid Blyton stories. It was the
Yes.
adventure stories,
Mm.
quite the sort of powerful girls and sort of, yeah, up to no good. And then we kind of progressed onto Roald Dahl books, which is obviously still huge here
Mm-hmm.
today. I'm actually off to the Roald Dahl Museum, his house, for a literary
Oh, that's
festival next month.
exciting.
And I'm so excited because, yeah, the actual shed is still there where he wrote all the books. And so I'm a huge fan. So, yeah,
I'm a
those
huge
those were
fan
mine.
as well.
Kind of, no, yeah, yeah, adventure books for children.
And if you could be any book character, who would it be?
Oh my goodness. Well, probably at the moment, and this is probably just because I'm living it through my 8-year-old daughter's love of Matilda. And we are just rereading that and watching the film and seeing the musical. And I don't think as a child when I was reading, I realized actually what sort of trailblazer Matilda is and how she,
Mm.
what she's actually working against in the home of, the two parents that really aren't there for her. So yeah, definitely Matilda. She's very empowering.
Yeah, I'm like, I would love to be Matilda, but I don't think I would be a child that would flourish in that environment. And I
No,
think I
no,
would be squashed down where she
yes.
rises up. Um,
Yeah.
so what are you reading right now? Have you got a book on your bedside table?
Oh, I'm a bookworm, and I think it's probably a huge part of why I'm a writer. I'm a huge reader, and my bookshelves next to my bed are just planks of wood that I've just got my husband to put up just random planks of wood as shelves so I can just keep on fitting the books. So I'm a bit bad with books because I only read one genre, and I do try different types of things, but I always come back to crime fiction,
Mhm.
specifically Nordic noir crime
Love it.
fiction.
Hmm.
And I am obsessed. And if I don't get to read and escape into one of my crime fiction books, I get really, ugh, re- really off because I just feel
Keep
like
a
that's my escape.
book at Sarah's hand at all times.
Yeah, I get really moody, and I didn't realize actually how important reading is to me, but it is. And yeah, so yeah, I've got so many books next to my bed. They're all crime fiction, so it's quite dark probably. And most are pretty much all of them are Nordic noir. I used to write for a magazine, and I promoted Nordic noir books and got to interview lots of amazing authors. I was just such a fan. And
Was
but
it
yeah,
you that
anything
has set off the trend?
probably yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so if you could invite five literary people to dinner, who would they be?
Gosh. Do you mean actual authors or just anybody in the literary world?
Anyone in the literary world will be fine.
Okay.
Dead or alive.
Yeah. Okay. So my first would absolutely be Agatha Christie
Oh, yes.
because, well, I grew up with Agatha Christie actually because that's all my mum read. My mum's a real bookworm at night time, and her books were just Agatha Christie. And if I wanted to read, that's probably what I was given. And I have implemented Agatha Christie into all my daughter's life. And actually, my last daughter, my fourth, is called Agatha after Agatha Christie.
That's
So,
wonderful. I love that.
so I would absolutely have Agatha Christie there for dinner, and hopefully there'd be a murder, and then she would solve it. That would just be an absolute bonus on top. Obviously Roald Dahl, but I'd
Hmm.
like Quentin Blake with him as well.
Oh,
He's
yes.
illustrated.
Yep.
I would just love to see the conversations that went on between those two,
Hmm.
of how the twits were brought together, and Miss Trunchbull, and I would just be so interested in their conversations and their whole kind of like creative process. I think that'd be amazing. I think I'd like Joe Nesbo. He's a Norwegian writer. He's a crime writer, but he writes children's books as well. And it's something that I've kind of touched on a little bit. Like I said, I wrote a crime fiction book years ago, and now I'm children's. And I do think there's a link. So I'm not quite sure why, but I'd like to know how he's done it so successfully. He's kind of really gone between the two of them. And then my fifth one, who would I have? Oh, I'm stumped with that. Oh, Julia Donaldson, of course, because she's just a genius. I
Mm.
mean, she's just an absolute genius. And I read her books all the time with my 8-year-old. And I think sometimes it's more for my benefit than hers because the way she rhymes, it's just so fluid and so natural. And it's just genius. So I just think, yeah, she'd bring a little bit of a happiness and a rhyming thing to the dinner. So we'd have like murder, and then we'd have rhyme, and then we'd, Quentin Blake would illustrate everything. And yeah, I think that'd be a crazy dinner
I'm coming to
party.
that dinner. That sounds amazing. Okay, now this one tickles me a little bit because you're based in the UK. I ask this of all my authors, which Hogwarts house are you in?
Okay, I'm not actually in
A non-Hogwarts person.
any. My husband and my daughters are obsessed.
Hmm.
We actually live 2 minutes from a village where a lot of it was filmed.
Oh, wow. That's exciting.
People that have been in it, and I've still not got the bug. I've tried so much, and that's so bad because if I'm the English person that you're asking, I don't know why. I don't know why I haven't
You are allowed to
got
have
anything for it.
choice in life, and if
Yeah,
you haven't embraced Hogwarts, that's fine.
yeah, I've tried. And we've even been to the Harry Potter world in London, like we've taken the girls. I love the whole kind of mystical fantasy, fantasy thing about it. I love that. I love wizards and witches. Like I love that. That's like my
Yep.
thing. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love ghosts. Like that's so me. So I love all of that. I'm just not sure why. I don't know why, but yeah, neither. Sorry.
That's cool. That we find out more about you with each
Yes,
question.
you do.
And the last question is, what advice would you give yourself if you could go back to the beginning of your writing journey?
Start earlier. Don't
Mm.
let these doubts or life or time or things that you think are restraints stop you from writing and turning that writing into books, because I think it's, like you say, every year we have a new generation. Every month there's a new children coming up, and books aren't going anywhere in whatever form they're coming out. Storytelling is not going anywhere. So, and it is a respectable career to follow. So yeah, definitely it would have been started earlier. I think possibly would have been easier. I wouldn't have been so tired, but and bogged down with life. But yeah, definitely I should have just gone for it when all
Mm.
those years of rumblings of should I, shouldn't I, and I didn't. And yeah.
I did a book event recently, and there was a little toddler running around, and the mum also had a baby. And so I scooped up the little guy to help out, and my back went crack. I'm like, oh, I'm not cut out for this anymore. Should have done this when I was younger.
Yeah. Oh
And getting
yeah.
getting down with the kids on the floor, it's like, oh, I'm not
Yeah.
sure if I'm going to be able to get up.
Yeah. Yeah. I tend to stand now at book events because I'm not getting back up when I get down.
No. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Sarah. I've loved hearing about your book.
So,
Would you be able to tell our listeners where we can purchase the heavy bag in Australia?
yeah, so I think at the moment, head to Days Lane Publishing, and you can find them on social media. They are there. Have a little look, and they've got the links for the pre-orders, and yeah, when it all goes out. So yeah, head to Days Lane Publishing for the heavy bag.
And is there a release date, or has it
Yeah,
already been
so
out?
Sunday, 22nd of September,
Oh, with
it is
perfect
releasing.
timing.
Yes,
Okay.
in Australia. So you're going to hear a lot more about it, because I will just say an amazing charity, Feel the Magic in Australia, have kind of jumped on board, and they are
Amazing.
using copies as well. They've got obviously they do a lot of grief work for children. So I think you're
Hmm.
going to hear a lot more about the heavy bag being used in schools, but charities as well in Australia.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. I appreciate your time tonight, and I've loved sharing your writing experience with the listeners.
Thank you so much.
Totally Lit is an independent podcast. You can help support us to continue to chat with wonderful Australian creatives by leaving a review on iTunes or sharing our socials with your friends. You can also make a contribution at www.buymeacoffee.com/totallylit. This will also help with equipment and podcasting platform fees. I love to interact with our listeners, so feel free to say hello either by email or social media. You can email me at totallylitpodcast@gmail.com, or you can find me on Facebook, Insta, LinkedIn and Twitter. Have you checked out the Totally Lit writing community on Facebook? It's a space to continue the conversation and share your writing successes, events, launches and latest projects. Jump into the group and say hello. Thank you for listening to Totally Lit, and don't forget to go out into the world to read, write, create, ignite.